There it is. All right. Good morning. I'd like to convene the Assembly Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Levine.
Here.
Bigelow. Present. Dolly. Dodd.
Here.
Gaines. Garcia. Gomez. Gray. Harper.
Gray and Dolly are here.
Oh, Gray is here. Dolly is here. Harper. Lopez. Lopez here. Mathis. Medina. Rendon. Ridley Thomas. Present. Williams.
Here.
We don't have a quorum.
All right. We don't yet have a quorum, but when we do have one, we'll establish that. But I see an author who's ready to present a bill, much like I was about 2.5 minutes ago in another committee where there also was not quorum, but I was able to present that and get out without the quorum established. So I think we'll let the author do his thing. Mr. Alejo,
Yep.
Please.
Good morning, buenos dias. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. First of all, I want to really thank you and your staff for your work on this important bill. I'm here to present AB 1390, a bipartisan bill that will bring efficiency to the process of adjudicating water rights in groundwater basins. Before I go into details, I want to make clear that this bill advances the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act passed by the legislature last year, not undermine it. When the governor signed the Sigma groundwater package last year, there was an interest in streamlining the adjudication process. AB 1390 will work in conjunction with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act to do just that. For this reason, this bill has attracted 16 co-authors from both parties and both houses of the legislature, including several members of this committee. The goal of AB 1390 is to clarify court procedures that apply to comprehensive groundwater adjudications to reduce the time and improve the efficiency of the process. Specific provisions of this bill will encourage early settlement and avoid undue disruption of local groundwater planning. In much of California, management of groundwater resources will be made easier by the identification and quantification of local groundwater rights, the purpose of an adjudication process. But the process is longer and less efficient than it should be. Making groundwater adjudication more efficient will relieve the burden on the courts, and at the same time it clarifies groundwater rights, bringing a double benefit to the entire process. And while the bill will make the process quicker and easier, we are under no illusion that adjudications can be made short and easy. However, AB 1390 will certainly make the process more efficient while protecting due process rights for all involved. Finally, I would like to address the main concern raised by the opposition and in the committee analysis. This bill is not intended to circumvent the requirements of the Groundwater Sustainability Act, but as stated, it supplements the Act and further its goals. It is my commitment to work with all the stakeholders, this committee, and the administration to figure out the best approach of having Groundwater Sustainability Act and the groundwater adjudications work together so that we can have an adequate and sustainable water supply for years to come. With that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote, and I have several advocates to speak in support of this bill, Mr. Chairman.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Alejo. For today's hearing, we are going to limit testimony for 3 minutes each to 2 main witnesses. I see 3, so if you guys kind of spread it out, that's good with me. But we want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to speak, and we have a long agenda that will probably push us up to caucus. So please.
Thank you, Dennis Albiani. On behalf of California Grain and Feed, the California Seed Association, pear growers, almond hullers and processors, and several other ag organizations that provide food and jobs for Californians. We support this legislation and have worked diligently with my colleagues and several other associations and organizations and a wide variety of stakeholder groups to draft this legislation, and are actually quite proud that we have brought together a very technical issue and a very thorough proposal. But I think I was asked to kind of kick off with an overview. Current law provides for a process to adjudicate water rights. That's existing law. Then last year, the legislature passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, SGMA, and it manages and regulates groundwater within high and medium risk basins. And it expressly states it does not impact water rights. So we have a current law that addresses water rights, and that's adjudications and a current process. This bill was designed to relieve pressure from the courts, cut down on costs, and reduce the burdensome time requirements for adjudications regardless of SGMA and that process. And it can be quite a timely process. It can go longer than a decade. And so my colleagues will discuss several of the elements that try to make it more concise and retain due process. We want to point out this bill is a procedural bill that addresses the process only on water rights. If the bill is not enacted, for instance, residents in a basin will still have the opportunity to adjudicate. It will just take longer and likely cost more. This bill addresses all adjudications, so that's also a difference, and all the basins. So that's about 500 plus basins in California. SGMA only addresses the high and medium importance basins, approximately 128. So there are some differences there. So this would provide and clean up the process for all basins in California and for landowners or groundwater holders to perfect their rights. The bill was written in cooperation with many other entities. Obviously, in the Farm Bureau, the agriculture community, and those led the charge, but we also worked closely with Aqua, with several other very experienced lawyers that do adjudications in their practice, and got feedback from a cross-section of stakeholders. We work diligently to be inclusive. We're continuing to work with stakeholders, continuing to work with the administration, with the Department of Water Resources, you'll hear from some folks today, like the Judicial Council, and we've been taking technical amendments and working on this very technical bill. So we have colleagues here to discuss the technical elements to it, and with that, I turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack Rice with the California Farm Bureau Federation. I just wanted to highlight the procedural nature of the bill, that this really is about process and it doesn't deal with substance, and that's one of the key elements that is most important to having something function effectively to make the adjudication process as efficient as possible. Another issue that I wanted to clarify or reiterate, I suppose, is that the due process concerns that were raised are shared by Farm Bureau and all of the folks that worked on this bill, and so the bill intentionally attempts to address and provide the maximum due process while also ensuring an efficient operation of the system. So with that, I'll just be available for questions.
Good morning. Lauren Hajic on behalf of California Citrus Mutual, California Fresh Fruit Association, California Tomato Growers Association, many other agricultural commissions and associations throughout the state. I just wanted to quickly address the concern that was raised that smaller parties may not be able to efficiently engage in this adjudication process, and just reiterate that adjudications right now are currently very long, very onerous on smaller users because the procedures can be used to drag out the adjudication. This bill implements a preliminary hearing procedure, which allows the court to determine if a comprehensive adjudication is needed. Also creates a form answer so that smaller parties can engage early in the process, and encourages settlement quickly by requiring disclosures of pumping data and other data early in the litigation so that all the cards are out on the table and parties can know what their water rights are early to meet those settlement requirements. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that testimony. We'll take a break now to establish quorum.
The absent members were Gaines, Garcia, Gomez, Harper,
Present.
Mathis, Medina,
Here.
Rendon, Williams. We have a quorum.
Great. Thank you very much. There's a motion. There's a second. And Daniel Pone from Judicial Council just stepped up, so if you want to briefly state your role in all of this.
Yes. Thank you, Chair and members. Dan Pone. As Mr. Albiani indicated, we've been working cooperatively with the sponsors in providing technical assistance and consultation on the actual bill language to try to make the court provisions as workable as possible. We're in the process of reviewing this bill and related legislation on groundwater. We'll be doing that within the next several weeks. We will share with them the analyses from this committee and the other committees, of course. The issue that was flagged by your consultant is one that we will take a direct look at as part of that analysis, and we look forward to continuing the cooperative relationship we've had in terms of trying to make this bill as workable as possible for the court.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Pone. All those in the crowd who are also interested in registering your support for this bill, you may come forward to the microphone at the front. Please only say your name, organization, and whether or not you support the bill. I don't want you guys to go too long.
Gail Delahunt with Western Growers Association. We support the bill.
Valerie Nera for the California Chamber of Commerce, also in support.
Any others in support of the bill? You guys did it perfectly. All right. If there are any witnesses in opposition to the bill, you may now come forward. And just as we did with the testimony in support of the bill, you'll have about a couple of minutes each to register your opposition. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Debbie from the Community Water Center. We work with communities that do not have access to safe, affordable drinking water. Last year, we worked diligently to ensure the passage of the historic groundwater legislation. While we understand the importance of the need to streamline adjudication, there are several critical elements that are not currently in the bill that would protect communities most affected by the drought. This bill needs to address the fact that many do not have access or the resources to participate in adjudication, and thus attorneys' fees and court costs should be included. Translations should be provided for the notice in all languages spoken by 10% of the basin's population. And the bill needs to effectively integrate with SGMA and SGMA's goals, and that includes allowing the state board or local GSAs to be parties to the adjudication, and the state board to have final say in whether or not the adjudication order will effectively protect the health of the basin. At this moment, Community Water Center is opposed unless amended, and we look forward to working with Assemblymember Alejo to ensure this bill is successful and protects all users of the groundwater basin.
Jennifer Clary, Clean Water Action, and she said everything I would want to say. Oppose unless amended.
Great. Thank you both so much for your testimony. Are there any other people who would like to register their opposition to the bill? Please state your name, your organization, and your opposition.
Kyle Jones, Sierra Club in California, and oppose unless amended with our allies.
All right. Without seeing any other testimony, we'll bring it back for any questions or comments from members. Okay, well, we have a motion and a second, and Mr. Alejo, I just want to commend you on your work and authorship of this bill. This was a bill that had a potential for being very challenging, but I think that under your leadership, you did a very good job of addressing many of the issues, and I know that you're committed to continue to address them as we move forward. So thank you.
Exactly.
Kathy, would you like to close, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, certainly as the chair of the Environmental Safety Committee, I've been a big champion in looking after disadvantaged communities and making sure they have access to safe and clean drinking water. And I think we're able to address some of those concerns expressed as the bill moves forward. But I think this is one of the most important water rights procedural bills that will move through the legislature this year. And a lot of work did go into this bill over the interim. A lot of stakeholders came together. People who disagree on water rights on other instances came together and agreed on these procedural aspects of this bill. But even last year when SGMA was passed, there was a recognition since last year that this was going to be one of the big issues that we were going to need to deliberate on and find agreement on. And I think we've done that in this bill. We've met with the governor, and I think a lot of this bill, there's a lot of agreement. There's a very small percentage of this bill where we're going to keep working and try to fine-tune as the bill moves forward. But I think we've accomplished a lot on this bill, and I want to thank all the members of the committee, and I'd respectfully ask for your vote here on this bill today.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Do pass to Judiciary Committee. Levine?
Aye.
Levine, aye. Bigelow?
Aye.
Bigelow, aye. Dolly? Aye. Dolly, aye. Dodd? Aye. Dodd, aye. Gaines? Garcia? Aye. Garcia, aye. Gomez?
Aye.
Gomez, aye. Gray?
Aye.
Gray, aye. Harper?
Aye.
Harper, aye. Lopez? Aye. Lopez, aye. Mathis? Medina?
Aye.
Medina, aye. Rendon? Ridley Thomas?
Aye.
Ridley Thomas, aye. Williams?
All right, this bill's out with 11 votes. Congratulations.
Thank you for that unanimous support.
Yeah. Ms. Eggman, you are up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. It's my honor to be here with you today. And again, this is another follow-up from last year's groundwater management plan, which came through at the end of the session, and everyone acknowledged that there were still some little things that probably needed to be adjusted. So this is one of those small, how do we move forward? So I want to begin by saying I appreciate the work of this committee, and I certainly take all of the recommendation amendments as my own. Thank you. Thank you. AB 647 seeks to address the need to recharge our state aquifers, which faces the threat of salinity intrusion and subsidence due to chronic years of overdraft. Currently, diversion to underground storage is considered a beneficial use only if the surface water that is stored in the ground is then subsequently extracted for consumptive beneficial use within 5 years. If that water is not taken back out and used within 5 years, the person loses their rights to water. So this bill does not define underground storage in and of itself as a beneficial use. We think we all agree that protecting our groundwater and our basins is critical for the environment, agriculture, and our communities. The need for groundwater recharge was recognized by the administration last year during these plans, and we have been working with stakeholders and will continue to work with stakeholders on any concerns that may come up. With me today is Ginny Zalizi from Stockton East Water District and Brandon Nakagawa from San Joaquin County to provide further testimony.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Eggman. And for your witnesses, you have about a couple minutes each.
Good morning. My name is Brandon Nakagawa, San Joaquin County. San Joaquin County supports AB 647. The Board of Supervisors and our local partners are committed to working with stakeholders on this measure as it moves forward. I want to start today by emphasizing that San Joaquin County contains 2/3 of the legal delta. We have a $3 billion agricultural production value and a groundwater basin that was once considered in critical groundwater overdraft. Yet, we as a community have made strides to balance these precious resources, to improve fisheries and wildlife, and also to balance planned growth within our urban communities. San Joaquin County truly is a microcosm of the state's struggle with the ongoing drought. For decades, recharging groundwater basins with surface water in wet years for use in dry years has been a strategy in California, not only for managing groundwater basins throughout the state, but also for stretching California's finite water supply. Even today, the California Water Plan, California Water Action Plan, IRWMPs up and down the state, urban and ag water management plans include groundwater management and groundwater recharge as a drought survival tool. At every meeting I've attended since the passage of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, it's pretty clear that stakeholders statewide recognize the need for AB 647. Focusing on ways to make it easier to recharge groundwater basins within the current water rights system and with practical safeguards will complement the successful implementation of the Groundwater Sustainability Act. I'd like to leave you with an example of San Joaquin County's work with a diverse group of stakeholders, specifically to the McCollum River watershed. The McCollum River Watershed Group represents over 24 water agencies spanning from the East Bay through San Joaquin County all the way to the tip of the Sierras in Alpine County. We've been meeting for almost 2 years now, and I've named our effort the McCollum WISE program. The objective is to build consensus around a list of broadly supported projects and programs that would integrate water supply reliability enhancements with ecosystem restoration, fisheries improvements, restoration of floodplains and functioning meadows, groundwater recharge, and all while doing it within with fiscally sound practices. I know it sounds too good to be true, but the reality is in 2 years we've really moved that ball down the field. The list of projects that we've been working on could be rounded out very soon with a interregional conjunctive use program. Recharging surface water in wet years in San Joaquin County's groundwater basins could help to also alleviate drought conditions in the East Bay, but also the reliance on our surface water supplies could be lessened, and that really creates opportunities for environmental enhancements with that surface water that's saved. Environmentally related beneficial uses such as cold water pool management, pulse flows for the attraction of returning salmons, pushing out juvenile salmons, recreational benefits, or simply just to carry over that surface water storage for future dry years. I mean, those are the benefits that we're trying to achieve. The Molkwise Group has been very invaluable in bringing together these environmental interests, but also to talk about groundwater recharge and the public trust issues surrounded with groundwater recharge and balancing that with fisheries, recreation, and other public trust issues. So we look forward to working with this committee and other stakeholders to refine the approach and to get AB 647 amended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Jeannie Zalezi, General Counsel for Stockton East Water District, here in support of AB 647. As Assemblymember Eggman mentioned, under current law, it's only a beneficial use to store water in the underground if that water is later removed for another beneficial use. For agencies such as Stockton East Water District, this is a frustrating experience because our purpose is to recharge the groundwater basin to improve levels and repel saline intrusion. It defeats the purpose of many agencies to require that that water be taken out when, in order to meet groundwater sustainability requirements, we want to keep that water in the ground for various purposes. So we think AB 647 is a step in the right direction to recognize groundwater recharge for these limited beneficial purposes in the ground is a step in the right direction to reaching groundwater sustainability. I want to point out that all water recharged into the basin would still be subject to regulation by the State Water Resources Control Board. This doesn't exempt anybody from any oversight. Anytime a permit is obtained for this purpose or a petition for change for this purpose, the State Water Resources Control Board has to determine that it will be used for a beneficial purpose and that no one else is going to be injured. So it's for this reason that we think we can accommodate some of the objections raised by Metropolitan Water District and others to easily allay their concerns. We stand committed to do that along with the Assembly member. And we think this is an important piece of legislation to recognize that groundwater recharge is an important beneficial use and is important to maintain sustainability that we all determine is important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other people who would like to register their support for this legislation? Please state your name, your organization, and whether you support the bill.
Mr. Chair, members, Kathy Christian representing Contra Costa County, one of the other major Delta counties. We want to associate our comments and support with those of the author and the previous comments. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Dominic Damari here for the Northern California Water Association, also in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other people in support? All right. Are there any witnesses that want to provide testimony in opposition? Okay, so you each have about 2 minutes to provide testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Ed Manning of KP Public Affairs on behalf of the San Luis Delta Mendota Water Authority and the Westlands Water District. This is basically the major Central Valley Project water contractors. We're in opposition to the bill. I think the goal is laudable. Certainly, we all have a new challenge with the groundwater management legislation that was passed last year. But fundamentally, when someone in the Delta takes water at certain times, it affects the entire system. Certainly in a year where we have a 0% allocation for the second year in a row, that means we have no water, no surface water deliveries. The State Water Project has 25% this year. Any diversions in the Delta that now would be defined as being beneficially used has an impact. First of all, we have to release water from CVPIA storage for Delta outflows and for fisheries. If during those releases any Delta agency were to take water and put it into recharge for groundwater, that would mean we would have to release additional water. So when you take water to put it into storage and now it's considered beneficially used, it does in fact impact farmers and everyone south of Delta, including communities in Los Angeles and beyond. So one thing we would say is that when you're in a condition where we're releasing water for flows, for Delta outflows, for fisheries, for other habitat, that's a time when you cannot do this. Secondly, there are certainly instances where there are excess water conditions in the Delta. And in those limited circumstances, when there's enough water for water rights holders, contractors, and fisheries, those are the limited circumstances when you can take water and put it into groundwater storage. Unfortunately, there are many, many instances where water is needed to deliver to the State Water Project, CVP, and fisheries, and during those times, you cannot take water that would be otherwise going to cities, to farms, and to the environment. So for those reasons, we oppose, and we would love to work with the author on narrowing the bill.
Great, thank you, and please remember you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Kathy Cole with the Metropolitan Water District. As the proponents mentioned, we do have concerns. We have not been able to register our official opposition, but I have been working with the author early and often, and I appreciate working with their staff through our concerns. I think the principal question is, why doesn't the current process work at the State Board? We think it's very important that you protect all the legal users of water, and particularly downstream, as Mr. Manning mentioned. So, the amendments that the author is taking certainly help. Don't pull all our concerns off the bill, but we do look forward to working with her and her staff and the proponents to try to find a way to thread this needle. Because I think what you're seeing here is a theme about groundwater recharge, which is a very important tool in the management toolbox of water agencies. But you also have to look at a kind of big picture. One size may not fit all, and it could have impacts to downstream users. And since we're on the other end of the pipeline, we do have concerns about that. So I am going to officially register my opposed unless amended position to the bill. Thank you.
Doug Obiji with the Natural Resources Defense Council. We're also in an opposed unless amended position on the bill. We have been working with the author's office and committee staff and others and laud the approach of doing groundwater recharge, but do believe that there are some significant unintended consequences both for other water users and for the environment from making what is a pretty dramatic change in California law. Right now, water storage is not a beneficial use of water, and this is, I think, even with the amendments, this is really changing the way that we manage water in the state with some potentially pretty significant impacts. So we look forward to working with the author and others to try to get to the root of this and make sure we really do need to move forward and do so in a smart way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Obiji. Are there other people who would like to register opposition? Please state your name, your organization, and your position.
Kyle Jones with Sierra Club California. On behalf of our organization, Community Water Center and Clean Water Action, we'd just like to say that we were in opposition. We saw the amendments this morning. We haven't had time to fully review them. And we believe the amendments are a step in the right direction. Look forward to working on this bill further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bianca Brow with Friends of the River, opposed unless amended.
Thank you. Phoebe Seaton, Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, opposed as well.
Thank you. Any other testimony? Great. Thank you. We'll take this back to the members for questions or comments.
I'd just like, first of all, thank you, Senator Eggman, for bringing forward what I think is a really common sense measure. I think it's almost laughable, members, that we passed Groundwater Sustainability Act that didn't include groundwater recharge as a beneficial use. In fact, maybe could I get Mr. Manning up for a question? I'm curious what, on behalf of Westlands and Met, what you would offer as a recharge option in the absence, you mentioned, and I think you raised some legitimate concerns about pushing more water through the system, but absent recharge, irrigation, and particularly flood irrigation, is the best recharge option happening on a regular basis. And of course, as we restrict those surface flows, we don't have irrigation. In addition to that, the natural economics are going to drive ag users in the direction of drip and other technologies that are going to further compound the problem. And it seems like we've got to have some option with which to deal with that. And if just get your suggestions on that.
Sure.